Thank you for joining me for part 2 of this series, Building Your Financial Pyramid. So, if you're a kid like me, you've heard the cliche term, the pyramids weren't built in a day. I know that I heard that every day growing up from my dad. Anytime I had a project or anything that took more time that I wasn't patient with, he threw that in my face. And unfortunately, now as an adult, I know the phrase to be true. And so today we're going to be spending time in this video talking together about how and why you should commit to building your very own financial pyramid. You may be familiar with the experience of not having a system. It probably looks something like, oh, great, I got a bonus this month. Let's go spend that on that trip we've been hoping we would be able to do. Or maybe it looks something like, oh, great, I got some extra jobs, or I worked some overtime this month. Let's take that money and throw it into the new car savings fund. And so that's not a system, right? Maybe that's a system to guarantee disappointment later on when you don't meet your goals. But a system is a set of clearly defined actions completed in order that are repeatable, that would produce an outcome that would otherwise not be possible. And so in just a bit, we're going to be talking about a part of the financial pyramid system that I call the money tree. So let's begin with the groundwork by dispelling 2 myths as a way of making a broader point, okay? So the 2 myths are, 1, our metabolism slows as we age, and number 2, we lose mental capacity over time, all right? So the reason to dispel these myths is because they're commonly held limiting beliefs, and they illustrate the power of systems and the reason why we need to implement systems as we age, okay? So there's this funny thing that happens over time. Everyone talks about how their metabolism slows. It's a reason that we accept weight gain as we get older, yada, yada, yada. Same thing with our mental acuity. We tend to say as we get older, we lose our mental acuity. But the reason someone feels like they're gaining weight or feels like their metabolism is slowing, or the reason someone feels like they lose mental acuity or mental capacity over time is because there's this thing that happens as we age. So I'm going to show you what that is. It begins with the things we accumulate, all right? As we age, we accumulate more responsibility, all right? That's as we age, we might have a job that demands more hours, or we might have stuff that we have to take care of at home, or doctor's appointments we have to go to. We just accumulate more responsibility. We also accumulate more material possessions. The more we put in our garage, the more required maintenance it is to keep it organized, to keep it clean. The bigger house we accumulate, the more effort goes into keeping it clean and to maintaining it. The more material possessions we accumulate, the more effort is required in order to maintain and create a system of order for those things. Otherwise, it becomes chaotic. We also accumulate more relationships. We might have kids. We might have a spouse or a significant other. We might have the kids' teachers or the kids' friends or the kids' friends' parents. All of a sudden, we have this bigger and bigger, ever-expanding web of relationships that we have to put attention and time into in order to maintain. And then finally, we have more obligations. So again, the same analogy as responsibility, but we might have more commitments to work, or we might take on a commitment to our church or to our synagogue, or we might become a board member somewhere, or we might hire employees at our business. The more, again, the principle remains, the more we accumulate, the more effort goes into maintaining that and doing it in an orderly way. To carry the analogy forward, all of the things we accumulate at the expense of time and attention. And so to bring it back to the metabolism or the mental acuity analogy, what actually happens is it's not that our metabolism slows, it's that as we age, we accumulate more things that demand more time and attention and therefore reduce the proportional amount of time we have for exercise or reduce the proportional amount of time we have for creative thought. And that's the reason we either gain weight or feel like we're less mentally acute. And so the reason to build a system is because the system will return you time and attention so that you can do and produce better outcomes in the things you already have in your life. The more we accumulate without having a system, the more and more chaotic it gets to maintain all the things we accumulate. And eventually it becomes a leaky bucket where you put new things into the top of the bucket and just spills out the bottom of the bucket. So today we're going to be talking about the importance of building a system, specifically the financial pyramid, which is why this is one of the key things I implement with clients at Peak Financial Planning, because one of our primary goals is to return you time and attention as your financial obligations, your financial commitments, and your financial rewards ultimately expand and take up ever expanding amounts of time and attention. And to bring in a quote here, the author James Clear has a quote that's an excellent quote. He says, "We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems." I talked about this slide in the first presentation that I did last week on cash flows the lifeblood of your finances and your financial system. But the idea of the pyramid is to repeat a physics principle, which is the stronger the foundation and the better you implement that foundation, the more support and stability it will provide for the levels that go above it. And so I encourage you that if you haven't already watched the cash flow video, I encourage you to begin by watching that and return to it. I'll put a link, a card up here on the YouTube video so you can go back to it, or I'll put links in the appropriate places so you can find it easily. But today's focus is the money tree. So we're not going to review the cash flow system. We're going to focus on the middle tier of this pyramid, which is the money tree. The money tree's focus is the planning component of your financial system. It turns you from being someone who is reactive, oh yeah, I got my bonus, let's use it for the trip, but we didn't actually plan for the trip, and if we didn't get the bonus, we wouldn't take that trip, into someone who is proactive, someone who's creating saving strategies for the things you want in life, reconciling that and making sure it works. And so today we're going to be talking about the money tree, which is the proactive component of the pyramid. And in the next video that follows this, we'll do the third tier, which is at the top, which is the profit first system, which is a system of automating the financial pyramid system. And as with all systems, in the beginning, it takes an investment of time in order to implement the new behaviors and new actions that comprise the system. The idea of any system, though, is that should be repeatable and standard so that it actually returns you time in the long run, and that's what the profit first system does. It allows you to automate tiers 2 and 1, the money tree and the cash flow system, so that you can save time and return time and attention back to the priorities or things that are important in your life outside of your financial pyramid. All right, so now we actually dive into the root of the money tree. So let's start with what the problem is. All right, the problem is that we have what's called a money mess. All right, and the money mess looks something like this. I'll try to move my head so it doesn't block things, move it around. But the money mess is the problem. So everyone has income. We either get it in the form of a paycheck or a profit if we own a business, or gifts, or windfalls like an inheritance or selling a property or selling investments that had a big profit. And all those things bring money in, right? From there, most of us live our lives with money coming in, we immediately spend it. We spend it on our living expenses, our rent, our house, or whatever. We pay off some credit card debt if we have some. We pay off student loans, car payments, whatever other debts we have. We pay off business expenses, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on and on. Money flows in, money flows out. Whatever is left goes where? We don't really have a plan. First, we don't really know whatever's left. And then second, where should we put it? The savings account, the 401k, the new car fund, the house fund, kids' school fund. How do we prioritize these things? And especially if we don't think about how much is going to be left, how do we know we're going to even have money to allocate to all these things? And you can see therein lies the problem. We have a money mess. Money comes in, we have no plan for where it goes, it flows out. Maybe we're lucky and we're a reactive way, and whatever's left we can throw towards something. You can see that if you have watched the prior video on cash flows, it's critical to do that cash flow analysis and find out what do you have left, how do you plan for your money? Because if you do set up financial goals, which we'll talk about in a second, now you have more power to plan proactively. And so moving forward, here's a list of financial goals, right? Build wealth, buy a house or a car, or whatever, insert desired item here, a boat, whatever. Travel to, insert destination here. Pay for kids' college, but that could also be kids' daycare, a tutor, kids' sports camps, kids' sports activities. Like kids cost money. Planning for having, kids' expenses is critical. And then home improvement projects. And you can see this list could go on and on. We could add all sorts of other things in here that, but I just wanted to illustrate that all of these things have something in common. In order to build wealth, buy a house or a car, travel to a destination, pay for kids' stuff, pay for a home improvement project, we have to first accumulate and then either invest or spend. It starts with accumulating, and then the second step is invest or spend. And so the trick here is the money tree is designed to help us do the planning component for the accumulation. And this is a really critical thing to understand, because you will be far better served having a plan for accumulation and saving than a plan for investing or spending, because the investing and spending is the goal. And as James Clear says, we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. If we don't have a system for accumulating, we're never going to have anything with which to invest or spend. And that's the critical component of the money tree, and that's what the money tree solves. All right, so here's the question you're probably asking yourself. What is a money tree? Let me show you. So I'll start with this quote. Your behaviors dictate your outcomes, all right? And the money tree is a system that allows you to implement behaviors that will dictate or create and manifest the outcomes you want in life. So starting at the top of the money tree, the first step is cash flows, understanding the lifeblood of your finances. And that's really understanding your paycheck and how it gets spent. What are your behaviors around your incomes? All right. There are a couple steps you can take to do that. One of them is go watch that cash flows video and implement a budgeting system where you pay attention to your money inflows. You can also make plans to either optimize your inflows by getting raises, or if you own a business, trying to optimize your actual income or profit. All of those things will help. And this is like what we would consider the foundational block of the money tree. If you thought of, we have a financial pyramid, which includes cash flows, money tree, and profit first. But you also have your money tree pyramid, and you have certain foundational activities that precipitate the whole money tree. And your paycheck and cash flows are that for the money tree. What's the second step of the money tree? Saving intentionally. All right. So this looks like if you have your paycheck, money flows from your paycheck into a checking account. Typically, in that earlier model, the money mess, we would spend immediately without any plan for savings. There's no intentional, proactive plan for savings. In the money tree system, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to set a target for an emergency fund. Typically, in the financial planning world, that's 3 to 6 months of expenses, depending on circumstance. We're going to set a target for the emergency fund, and then we're going to set a target for other savings goals. Let's say you have an immediate house project that needs to be done, and you have a leak or wet drywall, something unsafe at your home, or your air conditioning needs a repair. We want to set a savings goal for that. Let's say you want to buy a car. We want to set a savings goal for that. How much is it going to cost? How much do we need to save each month in order to achieve it? And that way we can proactively funnel money from the paycheck directly to these two savings goals. This is how the money tree system unfolds. We'll go from there. After saving intentionally, we're going to do the third step, which is invest tax efficiently. And that means paying attention to what your 401k contribution might be through work, or what your employee benefit options might be through like an HSA, or if you're self-employed, do you have the right types of tax advantaged accounts set up for your business, like a solo 401k or a SEP IRA, or even a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. The step after saving intentionally is allocating and accumulating money to build wealth separate from actually what you invested in. Like I said in the previous slide, we need a plan to accumulate first, and we're going to accumulate it in the most effective and efficient buckets, which are tax efficient buckets like a 401k, IRA, SEP IRA, Solo K. Determining which account is the appropriate account for you is a specific endeavor depending on your circumstances, and you're more than welcome to reach out and we can talk about it. There's also plenty of articles and videos online that can help guide you through which account type. But the system remains the same. We have to start with cash flow, save intentionally for our liquid or immediate flexible cash needs for emergencies or other immediate savings goals, and then save in the tax efficient buckets and allocate that money proactively. Understand that framework before we move to the fourth step of the money tree, which is invest flexibly. So if you've already set up your cash flow system, have an emergency fund that you've reached the capped limit on the target, you have other savings goals and you've reached those limits as well, you no longer need to allocate money to your save intentionally side, and you're already setting up and maximizing your investing in tax efficient ways, or you're accumulating in tax efficient buckets, you can choose to invest flexibly. This is completely optional, but if you had extra surplus cash, that would be a way to do it. The benefit of a taxable brokerage account is that the money is available to you without penalty, whereas the money in a tax-efficient account, like a 401k or an individual retirement account, is not accessible to you without a penalty. There are some small exceptions, but as a general rule, you will pay a penalty to access those monies. So tax-efficient money is long-term money that grows tax favorably. Taxable brokerage account is taxable, but there's no penalties to access that money. And then finally, we move to the fifth step of the money tree, which is everyday spending. Spend confidently. So if you've set up your cash flow system and you know what your spending is going to be, and you have planned spending targets, and you follow the money tree, you'll be able to save intentionally, invest tax efficiently, invest flexibly if you'd like to, and then at the end of the day, spend confidently, because you'll know that you have a planned budget that allows for the 3.5 steps above the spend confidently step, that you won't run out of money and you'll be able to meet your savings goals. But the key idea here is that we want to turn a money mess, chaotic, unplanned, reactive, no focus, into an organized, orderly system that actually allows you to flexibly make decisions over time, because your plan provides your anchoring, or your roots, your stable roots, so that you can then make flexible decisions. Now, here's the thing about the money tree, which is this is a system. It's a progressive system that requires trial and error, taking small steps, taking a small step back. What I mean by that is it might not be possible to set up a money tree. It might be idealistic to set up a money tree and immediately begin to implement it. But if you never make a plan, you have no direction towards which to work. So really, we have to think of the money tree as something we're working towards and something we're going to reconcile in order to get to the goal. What I mean by that is, you might start by building the money tree, and then what you have to do is set up a regular recurring cadence to check in on the money tree. And you might set some savings goals, and your initial cash flow analysis might lead you to believe that those savings goals are possible. You might live by that for 2 or 3 months, and at the end of the first month or second month, realize, actually, I don't have the cash flow for that. Maybe my income is variable and I made less money that month, or maybe I had sudden emergency expenses like a medical bill, or my parents got sick, or something like that, and I couldn't actually live up to the money tree for that month or two. That's totally fine. One of the things you'll do as a part of the system of implementing the money tree is have a regular cadence for reconciling. So in my financial planning practice with clients, we reconcile the money tree every 3 to 6 months. Believe me, if your money tree is not working, you'll know, because you'll end up negative cash flow, and you'll know that in the first month. You can immediately adjust that, change the money tree numbers, or change the buckets you're allocating to. Maybe you focus more on saving intentionally and less on tax efficient investing or flexible investing. You have to cut somewhere to add somewhere. Part of it, though, is you have to set the money tree up in order to know where your gaps are. And it may seem self-defeating, like to set something up that's point in time that you know will probably be wrong. But the thing is, it'll be a hell of a lot better to make a money tree and update it 2 or 3 times a year, and rest easier knowing that you're actually proactively working towards your financial goals, than never setting up some kind of route or direction and going to sleep anxious and waking up anxious in the middle of the night, wondering, am I going to be able to pay for my kids' college? Am I going to be able to pay for this trip that I promised my family? Or, whatever other commitments we make in our head that we never plan for. And then we have the anxiety, or worse, we have the anxiety coupled with making bad decisions, like accumulating bad debt, consumer debt. All right, so to round this presentation out, the question is, what's next? To begin, I recommend that if you haven't watched the cash flows and budgeting video, you should start by that. Again, I'll link that here. I'll put a card up on the YouTube video so you can go back to it. Like I said, in the money tree, your cash flows and budgeting are the foundation of this entire pyramid. It's the reason it's the bottom of the pyramid. We have to understand cash flows. It's king. Your income is your greatest wealth generating tool. It will be your savings vehicle, which if you don't have savings, you cannot invest. So you have to start there. But if you've already done that, then with the money tree specifically, the first thing is create a first draft. James Clear always shares this quote. It's, again, referring back to him. He's a habits guy. And he says, your best work is just on the other side of your earlier, more mediocre work. And one of the reasons we don't start things is because we hate to put out a yucky first draft of something. But everything starts with the first draft. And your best work is on the other side of that first draft. So start with the first draft of the money tree. Start with your cash flows. Think about saving intentionally, and then saving and investing in tax efficiently, and then investing flexibly, and then spending guilt-free, right? So in that order. Create a wishful draft, and then you'll work backwards to create the route that takes you there. Step 2, reconcile your budget with your money tree. You need both parts of the system for the system to work. Can't do money tree without budget. You can do budget without money tree, but money tree is the logical next step of the budget. What's the point of making a budget and freeing up cash flow if you're not going to create a proactive plan for where to send it, where to accumulate it so that it can grow or fuel the desires that you have for it? So set up a system for reconciling your budget and your money tree so that you can set appropriate savings targets. Number 3, set targets for your emergency and other cash funds. We want to kind of cap our cash. We want to limit how much cash we're sitting on. Oftentimes, there's a diminishing return to accumulating more and more cash. We do want to accumulate, but in that financial goals slide where it said accumulate plus, it's always followed by an action. Accumulate builds up, and then the plus is the action we take with it. And we're typically going to take one of 2 actions: invest or spend. So we want to set cash targets or cash caps for our emergency and other cash funds. And then when we have other cash come up, we want to have a place to send it, and that's what the money tree says. And the final step is ask for help, right? So this is a system we build with every client at Peak Financial Planning. The goal, as I said, is to create order where there was none and optimize your accumulation and your ability to invest or spend, and to free up time, because a financial system is like this ever-expanding organism, like an octopus with many tentacles. It becomes overwhelming over time. We need to wrangle that together, create clarity and order out of it, and that is this 3-step process of the financial pyramid. You're more than welcome to ask for help at thepeakfp.com. My contact information is there. You can ask any questions you have, and I'll try to answer them. You can send them by email or put them in the comments to this video, or even request specific topics, like maybe diving deeper into elements of the money tree or elements of the budgeting system, or future requests for stuff that I can share videos like this on. And last but not least, I hope you found this video helpful. Stay tuned for part 3 of the financial pyramid, which is the automation portion of this, which is the profit first system that allows you to automate once you have your cash flow and your money tree systems in place. That'll be coming next week on Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, August 24th. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm interested to hear any feedback you have on the quality of this video and the last one, or the way it's been delivered. And as always, I appreciate your support and your time.